The Anderson family reunion happened every 5 years at Grandpa's beach house in Cape Cod. This year marked the first reunion since he'd passed away, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. I arrived in my 8-year-old Toyota, parking next to my cousin Blake's new Porsche Cayenne and my brother Ethan's Range Rover. The driveway looked like a luxury car dealership, with my modest sedan the obvious outlier. There she is. Aunt Caroline's voice rang out as I walked up to the house. Our little minimalist. The family was gathered on the wraparound porch, about 40 people total, 3 generations of Andersons, all watching as I climbed the steps with my single weekend bag. Lily. Mom rushed over, her smile tight. We were worried you wouldn't come. I wouldn't miss it. Still driving that old thing? Blake called out, gesturing to my car. Ethan was just saying we should start a GoFundMe to get you something reliable. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The Toyota runs fine, I said evenly. That's what poor people always say, Blake's wife Madison muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. I ignored her and went inside to find my room, except my usual bedroom was occupied. Oh, Lily. Aunt Caroline appeared in the doorway. We gave your room to Blake and Madison. They need the space with the twins. We put you in the attic guest room. The attic room was barely finished, with a sloped ceiling and a twin bed that had seen better days. This is fine, I said, dropping my bag. Dinner that night was a catered affair. Lobster filet mignon, champagne flowing freely. I sat at the far end of the table, next to Cousin Rachel's teenagers who were glued to their phones. So Lily, Uncle Dennis said loudly, still working at that nonprofit? Yes. I'm the director of operations now. Director. He laughed. Fancy title for what, $40,000 a year? Nonprofits don't pay well, Mom added quickly, like she was apologizing for me. But Lily's always been more about purpose than money. That's admirable, Aunt Susan said in a tone that suggested it absolutely wasn't. Though I couldn't imagine living on so little. How do you even afford rent in Boston? I manage. She has roommates, Ethan announced. 3 of them in a tiny apartment in Dorchester. More sympathetic looks around the table. Well, we can't all be successful entrepreneurs, Blake said, raising his glass to Ethan. Some of us have to settle for meaningful work. After dinner, Mom called everyone to the living room. We need to discuss Grandpa's estate, she began. Specifically this house. The beach house, a 6-bedroom oceanfront property that Grandpa had bought in 1975 for $80,000, was now worth approximately $4.5 million. The will leaves the house to all 4 of his grandchildren equally, Mom continued. That's Blake, Ethan, Rachel, and Lily. But maintaining it is expensive, Uncle Dennis added. Property taxes alone are $45,000 annually. Then there's insurance, maintenance, utilities. We've done the math, Aunt Caroline said. Each quarter share would be responsible for about $15,000 per year in carrying costs. I saw where this was going. Obviously that's not realistic for everyone, Mom said, looking directly at me. So we've worked out a solution. Blake, Ethan, and Rachel will buy out Lily's share. That way she gets some cash and the rest of us can keep the house in the family. How much is the buyout? I asked. We're offering $200,000, Blake said. That's generous, considering you can't afford to maintain your share anyway. The house is worth $4.5 million. A quarter share would be $1,125,000. But you can't pay the maintenance costs, Ethan argued. You'd be forced to sell anyway. We're doing you a favor. By offering me less than 20% of what my share is worth? It's $200,000 more than you have now, Aunt Caroline said. Think of what you could do with that money. Pay off student loans, get a better apartment. I don't have student loans. Well, whatever poor people need money for, Madison said with a wave of her hand. The room tittered with laughter. I need to make a call, I said, standing up. Lily, don't be difficult, Mom said. This is a fair offer. Excuse me. I walked out onto the beach, pulling out my phone as waves crashed in the darkness. I dialed a number I knew by heart. Miss Anderson. Calling on a Friday evening. Thomas, I'm at the Cape House. There's a situation with my family regarding the property. Thomas Mitchell, senior property manager at Coastal Elite Management, was quiet for a moment. What kind of situation? They're trying to buy out my quarter share for $200,000. That's insulting. I know. Can you come up tomorrow morning? Bring the full portfolio documentation. Consider it done. 9 a.m. Perfect. When I returned to the living room, they were all waiting. Well, Blake asked, are you going to be smart about this? I'll give you my answer tomorrow morning. I've asked someone to join us for breakfast. Who? Mom asked suspiciously. My property manager. Your property manager? Ethan laughed. Lily, you rent an apartment. You don't have a property manager. We'll discuss it in the morning. I barely slept that night in the attic room. At 8:45 a.m. I was showered and dressed, waiting on the porch when Thomas's Mercedes pulled into the driveway. He emerged looking every inch the successful businessman. Tailored suit, leather briefcase, the kind of presence that commanded attention. Miss Anderson, he said, shaking my hand warmly. Thomas. Thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it. The family was gathering for breakfast when we walked in. All conversation stopped. Everyone, this is Thomas Mitchell. He manages my properties. Properties. Uncle Dennis's voice was skeptical. Plural. Good morning, Thomas said pleasantly, setting his briefcase on the dining room table. I apologize for interrupting your reunion, but Ms. Anderson asked me to present some documentation regarding the estate discussion. This is ridiculous, Blake said. Lily doesn't own any properties. Thomas opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. Actually, Ms. Anderson owns 14 properties across Massachusetts and Rhode Island. The room went silent. That's impossible, Mom whispered. I assure you it's quite possible. Thomas pulled out a document. Shall we review the portfolio? He laid out a spreadsheet on the table. Property 1. A 6-unit apartment building in Jamaica Plain, purchased in 2016 for $780,000, current value approximately $1.9 million. Ethan's mouth fell open. Property 2. A 4-unit building in Providence, purchased in 2017 for $520,000, current value $1.2 million. Property 3. A 3-family in Somerville. Stop, Dad said hoarsely. How much is all of it worth? Thomas consulted his spreadsheet. Combined value of all 14 properties, approximately $18.3 million. With outstanding mortgages totaling $6.1 million, Ms. Anderson's net equity is $12.2 million. And Susan made a choking sound. But she works at a non-profit, Uncle Dennis stammered. She drives a Toyota. A paid-off Toyota, I interjected. Because I don't believe in car payments for depreciating assets. The apartment with roommates? Rachel asked weakly. Is actually a 3-bedroom condo I own in a building I own. My roommates pay me market rate rent. Combined with my other rental income, my properties generate approximately $67,000 per month in positive cash flow. Mom was shaking her head. This can't be real. Where did you get the money to buy all this? Remember Grandma Helen on Dad's side? She left me $100,000 when I was 22. You all told me to spend it on a nice car and a fun vacation. You bought real estate instead? Blake's voice was faint. I bought a duplex in a transitioning neighborhood. Lived in one unit, rented the other. Saved aggressively, leveraged the equity and repeated the process. 14 times over 12 years. Thomas pulled out another document. Ms. Anderson is also one of our firm's most successful clients. She has an excellent eye for undervalued properties and a gift for property management. But you live like you're poor, Madison said. I live intentionally. I drive a reliable car because I don't need to impress anyone. I work at a nonprofit because the mission matters to me and the salary is adequate for my needs since my passive income covers everything else. I share housing because it's financially efficient and I enjoy the company. Why didn't you tell us? Mom asked, tears in her eyes. Because of this. Because the moment you knew I had money, I'd stop being Lily and start being a target. We're your family, Aunt Caroline started. Who just tried to cheat me out of $925,000. I finished. You offered me $200,000 for a share worth $1,125,000, banking on the fact that you thought I was too poor to afford the carrying costs. It was a negotiation, Blake protested. It was exploitation. You saw someone you believed was vulnerable and tried to take advantage. Thomas cleared his throat. Speaking of this property, I should mention that Ms. Anderson asked me to evaluate it for potential addition to her portfolio. Addition? Ethan asked. She's considering buying out all 3 of your shares, Thomas said. At fair market value, of course. That would be $3,375,000, I said. For Blake, Ethan, and Rachel's combined 75% ownership. I'd pay cash, close in 30 days. The room erupted. You can't buy us out. Blake said. Why not? You were just trying to buy me out. That's different. Because you thought I was poor and desperate? You're right, it is different. I'm offering you fair market value. You were offering me pennies on the dollar. Mom stood up. Lily, this house has been in the family for generations. And I'm family. I'm Grandpa's granddaughter, just like Blake, Ethan, and Rachel. My quarter share is legally mine. But we can't afford to keep it if we have to buy you out, Rachel said, speaking for the first time. We don't have $3.4 million in cash. Then perhaps you should accept my buyout offer. You'd each get $1,125,000. More than enough to buy your own vacation properties. This isn't fair, Aunt Caroline said. What's not fair is spending an entire evening mocking me for being the poor one, while planning to steal my inheritance. We weren't stealing, Uncle Dennis started. You were offering me 18 cents on the dollar for my share. What would you call that? Thomas packed up his briefcase. Ms. Anderson, shall I prepare the purchase offers? Give them 48 hours to decide. Either they pay me fair market value for my share, I pay them fair market value for theirs, or we maintain the status quo and they start paying their portion of the $60,000 annual carrying costs. That's $15,000 each, Rachel said weakly. Per year. Which you can easily afford according to all your comments last night about your successful businesses and high incomes. Blake's face had gone red. You're really going to do this? Financially attack your own family? I'm not attacking anyone. I'm protecting my legal interests. You're the ones who turned a family reunion into a financial ambush. We were trying to help you, Mom said. By cheating me? By publicly humiliating me? By calling me poor and laughing about my old car and my nonprofit salary? My voice was rising. You weren't trying to help me. You were trying to help yourselves to my assets. Aunt Susan burst into tears. We didn't know you had money. Exactly. You only help family members you think can't help themselves. Or who you can exploit. I picked up my weekend bag from where I'd set it by the door. I'm leaving. Thomas will send over the formal offers by Monday. You have 48 hours to respond. Where are you going? Dad asked. To one of my properties. I have a vacant 2-bedroom in Falmouth that I've been considering for my personal use. Oceanfront, private beach, much quieter than this place. You own another beach house? Ethan's voice cracked. I own 3 beach houses actually. The one in Falmouth, one in Narragansett, and a small cottage in Kennebunkport. I smiled. The Cape Cod market is overvalued anyway. I've been looking to liquidate. I walked to the door then turned back. Oh, and Blake? That Porsche you drove up here? My rental income this month will cover the entire purchase price. In cash. But I'll stick with my Toyota. Better resale value. 48 hours later. The responses came via email through Thomas. Blake. Offered to buy my share for $500,000. A compromise. Ethan. Requested a payment plan for the carrying costs because he'd overextended on the Range Rover. Rachel. Accepted my buyout offer of $1,125,000. Thomas forwarded them all to me with a note. Your move. I called Rachel first. I'm accepting your acceptance, I said. Wire transfer will arrive in 72 hours. Thank you, she said quietly. Lily, I'm sorry. About all of it. I was as bad as the others going along with it. Why are you selling when Blake and Ethan won't? Because I don't need a Cape Cod beach house. I need financial security. And because you're right, trying to cheat you was wrong and I don't want any part of it. After we hung up, I texted Thomas, counter Blake's offer with $400,000 for his share. Take it or leave it 24 hours. For Ethan, I offered to buy his share for $1 million, below market value but still fair. Within 24 hours both accepted. 6 weeks later, I owned the entire beach house. 3 months later, I was sitting on the porch of Grandpa's house, my house now, when a car pulled into the driveway. "Wait. I hope this is okay," she said, climbing out. I was in the area and thought I'd stop by. "It's fine. Want some coffee?" We sat on the porch watching the waves. "What are you going to do with this place?" she asked. "I'm not sure yet. Maybe keep it for personal use. Maybe turn it into a high-end vacation rental. Thomas says it could generate $15,000 a week during peak season. That's more than I make in a month. Real estate is a good investment if you're patient and strategic." She was quiet for a moment. "The family's not doing well. Blake's Porsche got repossessed. Ethan had to sell the Range Rover. Your parents are barely speaking to you." "I know. Do you care?" "I thought about that. I care that they're struggling. I don't care that they're angry at me for refusing to be exploited." "Fair enough." She sipped her coffee. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why do you work at the nonprofit? If you're making $800,000 a year from rentals, why work at all?" "Because the work matters. Because I like helping people who actually need it. Because purpose matters more than profit." "But they pay you $42,000 a year." "Which is $42,000 I don't need but can donate back to the organization through other channels. Plus, it keeps me grounded. Reminds me that wealth isn't about how much you make. It's about the choices you make with what you have." Rachel nodded slowly. "I invested my buyout money. Talked to a financial advisor, set up a diversified portfolio. It's boring but stable." "That's smart. I learned it from you. Not the flashy version of success that Blake and Ethan chase. The quiet, sustainable version." We sat in comfortable silence, watching seagulls wheel over the water. "You know what the saddest part is?" Rachel said. "If they'd just treated you with respect, you probably would have shared everything. The houses, the investment advice, all of it. Probably. But they couldn't see past their assumptions about what success looks like." "No, they couldn't." My phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. "New property listing in Chatham. Waterfront, 8 units, needs work but excellent bones. Interested?" I smiled and typed back, "Send me the details." Some people measure success in luxury cars and designer labels. I measured it in properties purchased, tenants housed, wealth built quietly and sustainably over time. And in the freedom to walk away from people who valued my money more than they valued me. Even if those people were family. Especially if those people were family.